Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. In today's webinar, we're going to cover what's new in RAD Studio 10.2.2 and what we have planned for Delphi, C++ Builder, and RAD Studio. Now, RAD Studio 10.2.2, also known as RAD Studio Tokyo Release 2, was just released this Tuesday and is now available for download. This session is presented by myself, Serena DuPont, David Millington, and Marco Cantu. If you have any questions after this webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Now, Embarcadero is really focused on tools for developers, and this includes RAD Studio, Delphi, C++ Builder, our own Interbase database, and with the acquisition of Sencha, also all the great tools that Sencha has to offer, including ExtJS, XReact, and Sencha Architect. Now, what is RAD Studio? If you're not familiar with RAD Studio, it really provides the fastest way to develop multi-platform native applications. With RAD Studio, you can build an application once, and using the same code base, you can target Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. And it has built-in support for cloud services and Internet of Things connectivity. Now, RAD Studio provides powerful VCL controls for Windows 10, and we've actually added 4 new VCL controls in this release, and we'll cover those and do a demo in just a couple of minutes. And it also enables FireMonkey multi-device application development for Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, all from the same code base right within the IDE. Now, with RAD Studio, you're able to target all the latest versions of the major operating systems for Windows, macOS, Android, iOS, and also Linux Server for Delphi. Now, in terms of VCL and FireMonkey applications, you can target Windows 10, including the latest Fall Creators Update. And for FireMonkey, we also support macOS, including macOS Sierra. And with 10.2.2, we added support for High Sierra, the latest Apple operating system, and then also support for Android Nougat and Oreo, and iOS 10 and iOS 11. Now, in RAD Studio 10.2.2, we've expanded our iOS 11 support to also include support for the iPhone X, and this includes support for proper layout and scaling across the iPhone X, and also support for 2 new additional launch images that you need to add if you're building for the iPhone X. And as part of this release, we've also enhanced performance across iOS and Android, including touch support, scrolling, and more. Now, the enterprise connectors are a great add-on product for RAD Studio. It makes it really easy for you to connect to any application, and it's just as easy as connecting to a database. And this includes QuickBooks support, Salesforce support, SAP support, etc. And you can try out all the different connectors right within the Getlt package manager. So all you have to do is launch RAD Studio, go to the Tools menu, and then select Getlt Package Manager, and you'll see a new Enterprise Connectors category. And the Enterprise Connectors are sold in 2 different editions. One is the Enterprise Edition with around 45 or so different connectors, and then the Enterprise Plus Edition with 80 or so different connectors. Now let's have a look at the great new features that we added in 10.2.2. We have 4 new VCL controls in RAD Studio 10.2.2, and this includes date and time pickers that you can see here on the screen. It also includes a new layout control, a card panel control, and this card panel is a specialized panel component that lets you manage a collection of cards, and we're going to have a look at that in action in just a couple of minutes. And then also the stack panel component, and this component is a container control, and this container control makes it really easy for you to automatically align all parented controls either vertically or horizontally. Now let's have a look at the 4 new VCL controls in action. Studio 10.2.2, we provide 4 new VCL GUI controls. And while these controls were designed with Windows 10 in mind, they also work on older versions of Windows and are fully support VCL styling. Now, for each of the components, we provide a sample project for both Delphi and C++. And the first one we're going to look at here is the T-Date Picker and T-Time Picker sample project. So here we have our date picker, and you can see you can choose from the initial date. So for example, I could change this to sometime in December, like the webinar's date. And then I can also adjust the date format, the drop-down count. I can set whether or not I want to show the show and cancel buttons, etc. And likewise, for the time picker control, there are also a number of different properties that you can customize. We have the initial time, we have the time format, and we also can choose how many drop-down options we want to show for selecting the time and also the minute increment. Now let's have a look at both of these new GUI controls in action. So we have here the time picker, and you can see this is a pop-up scrolling list, and we can click the check mark because we have the show, OK, and cancel buttons enabled. To set the date, you can also of course set the date by hitting enter. And then we have a number of different date formatting options that you can choose from, and you can adjust them to your locale. For example, I can switch this to the Windows 10 purple style or the Windows 10 slate gray style. And you can see here that the date picker, and if I switch this to like slate gray, for example, and the time picker automatically have the new VCL style applied, and they look really nice with the Windows 10 style. Again, see the show and cancel buttons, you can disable them, and in that case you could just hit enter, for example, to set your time, and then you can choose from a number of different time formats. So for example, you can choose to show AM or PM, you can select the minute increments. So you can see here we set this to 10, so every 10 minutes, and it has a number of different settings that you can choose from. Now let's have a look at the stack panel. Now the stack panel is a new container control, and it allows you to automatically align all parented controls vertically or horizontally while retaining each control's custom height and width settings. So for example, here we have a stack panel, and the parented controls are a label, an edit, a memo, and a button. And if we have a look here at the stack panel, you can see there's a number of different settings here that you can set. So for example, horizontal positioning, we also have orientation and more. Let's have a look at our stack panel component in action. The stack panel component fully supports VCL styling, so you can easily adjust the style using any of the included VCL styles or any of the custom styles you might be using. As you can see here, you can adjust the spacing and padding for the controls. And you can also adjust the horizontal or vertical orientation and the positioning. And the way that the stack panel component is designed, given that it's a container control, it allows you to automatically align all the parented controls. So for example, the label, the edit, the button, and the memo, either vertically or horizontally while retaining each of those controls' custom height and width settings. And with that said, let's have a look at our fourth new VCL control, and this is our new card panel component. Now, the card panel component is a specialized component that manages a collection of cards, and each card itself is a container for other controls. And we can see that if we expand the cards here, you can see we have card 4, card 3, card 2, card 1, and each card is containing an image in this case. And only one card is visible at a time, so we can right-click onto the card for panel and select new card, for example card 6, and we can just drop a button onto this. Now the card panel component has support for right and left gestures, and you can also easily add user interface buttons to your application UI for navigating between the different cards that are part of your collection. And you can also loop between all available cards in the collection. And you can think of this control as either a page control without tabs, or really an easy way to create a wizard-like user interface. Now let's have a look at the card panel in action. Again, it supports VCL styling, and we can navigate between the cards. We can also swipe right or swipe left to navigate, and we can enable looping. And here we have the 6th card that we added. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Marco. Marco?
Thanks, Sarina. On another area of the product, we have some interesting news about RAD Server. First and foremost, we are now including a RAD Server deployment license with every license of Enterprise and Architect editions of RAD Studio, Delphi, or C++ Builder. And that's true for someone buying a new license or upgrade, but also for customers on an existing and active update subscription. This is a lot of value, and it's a single site deployment license with unlimited users. So that's really big news and helps probably putting some additional interest into RAD Server, which is our technology for hosting REST APIs. And we started focusing on using RAD Server for mobile and desktop applications but there is clearly an increased interest to use it for more general scenarios and specifically for JavaScript client scenarios. Now the focus is clearly on Sencha ExtJS, which is a solution that's now part of the Embarcadero family, but we are trying to help in general ways supporting the development of JSON-based RAD services. And so what we have done is provided a new helper for producing JSON for ExtJS and any other JavaScript library. This is not strictly part of EMS or RAD Server, although it can certainly be used in that scenario. What we are doing is extending the batch move architecture that's part of FireDuck, but can be used for any dataset, not just a FireDuck dataset. And this batch move architecture can be used for moving data from one database to another, but also to other formats, and we are specifically adding the ability to write JSON. So you, rather than writing manual code or doing some manual configuration, you can do full mapping, and the batch move allows you picking fields and mapping fields to fields. So it's not just simply a one-to-one mapping, but it can be fairly complicated, and also allows a bunch of formatting and configurations for your for the JSON that you want to produce. Again, this specific case is usage within RAD Server. For that purpose, the batch move component supports creating, writing to a stream, or integrating to a writer, as in this 2 lines of code. You can also map to a JSON array and then use that JSON array as part of a larger JSON data structure. So I've kind of given 2 glimpses of this component and how it can be used. Let's focus on an actual demo. First thing, I want to show you a simple demo. There is a connection to a database. There is a table, which is just a very simple query to the data. And then there is a dataset reader connected to the batch move architecture, which defines where the data comes from. And then there is a JSON writer, which defines where the data goes to in terms of target. Now, in this case, I have almost no custom configuration. I've just dropped the components and connected them. And then I have this very simple line of code. What I'm doing is I'm creating a stream and opening the table, running the query, connecting the stream to the batch move output, and executing the batch move operation. So this is extremely simple code. There's no custom processing of the JSON data structure, and what you can get is your properly formatted JSON. Now there is a UTF encoding BOM marker here, but beside that it's just plain JSON string with all fields and all information. Now, where this same architecture comes handy, and you can see this is extremely similar in terms of structure, is when building web service. And in this case, it's an EMS web service, and it has these components. And then if we look at the code used to produce the structure is really minimum. In this case, I'm doing something slightly different from the code that was in the slide. I'm creating a stream and determining the content type and returning the stream, connecting the stream to the writer, and executing the batch move to populate the stream. And if I run this application and I get EMS to start as here, now I can move to my browser and I can get the output from the employee URL within my RAD server hosted service. Again, all you need to write is very few lines of code in this way, or if you prefer, with the JSON writer format. Now, you can actually share this JSON writer for multiple URLs and multiple different data sets. So you might want to connect the query to the batch move component dynamically, so you can reuse the same structure for different executions. And with that, I'll leave to David to continue covering what's new in 10.2.2.
Thanks, Marco. Now let's have a look at some of the IDE, UE, and UX changes in 10.2.2. Last year in Berlin Update 2, we introduced quick edits of VCL, and quick edits are a feature that allow you to quickly edit some of the common properties when you're form designing. Now that release was VCL only, but in 10.2.2 we've introduced the feature for FireMonkey. So let's have a look at a quick demo. So I have here a brand new FireMonkey application. I'm just going to add a couple of controls, button and a panel. When you right click on any control, you can see the quick edit menu item. And when you click this, it opens up a small floating window that gives you quick access to some of the most common properties. So for this panel here, I want to change the alignment, and I'm going to do that by setting it to be bottom aligned. One of the things I really like about quick edits is that it's a visual editor. So for alignment, for example, you can see here the buttons that indicate the different types of alignment, and then you can actually see visually the effect of the setting. When I click OK, you can see it's changed. If I quick edit again, I can go into the layout section, and this time I want to change the margin on the bottom so it will float off the bottom of the form a little. Type in 50. Again, this is visual, so you can see that I'm typing 50 into an edit box that is located at the bottom here, representing spacing at the bottom. Press enter, and you can see that the panel moves upwards. Or if I quick edit for the button, you can see there's a different field here for text, and I can just change that by typing hello, pressing enter. You can see the button's caption is changed. So quick edits allow you to change the most common properties when you're form editing. And in 10.2.2, as well as being available for VCL, it is now also available for FireMonkey. We've also updated the Getlt installer UE. You can see on screen two screenshots. On the left, the blue screenshot is how the Getlt platform selection dialog, which you see when you run the Getlt installer to install the IDE, or which you can invoke from the IDE itself, looked in older versions of the IDE. On the right is how the same dialog looks in 10.2.2. You can see we've cleaned up the UE a little, and we've also taken a number of design cues from the dark IDE theme, which is also new in 10.2.2 and we'll get to in a moment. I think the new installer looks much nicer. In 10.2.2, we've added a long-standing, very common customer request, which is a dark IDE theme. Now, dark themes are very common in productivity applications or applications that you use for a long time, for many hours on end, and Delphi and C++ Builder certainly fit into that category. The theme we've added is not black and white, but a dark grey, a charcoal. And this because it's easy on the eyes, it's not high contrast, it's something that you can look at and use for many hours on end easily. You can see a screenshot here on the right hand side, and we'll look at it live in a demo in a minute or so. It's important to note that the VCL and FMX form designers are not themed, they are real. And the reason for that is that it's important when you're form designing that what you see is what you get, when you're designing a VCL app, for example, you want it to look like how Windows looks. You want it to look how it will look when you actually run the application. Now you can toggle between the light and dark themes very easily, either in the Tools Options dialog or simply with a toolbar button on the desktop layout toolbar, which sits to the right of the main menu. When you do so, it changes both the IDE and the editor color schemes together as a pair. The reason for that is that if you have an editor color scheme with white as a background color, for example, then when you toggle to the dark IDE theme, you most likely want the editor itself to also toggle to a color scheme with a dark background. But of course, you can still change both of these completely individually if you wish. I want to give a shout out here as well to DelphiStyles.com, who designed the theme for us. I think they've done an excellent job. We've also created new icons for all the components that we ship with the IDE, and that's a large number, it's 700 or so in a default install. Now, the icons in previous versions of the IDE have a long history. Some of them date back at least 20 years, and a wide variety of different graphic styles. Some of them also didn't necessarily represent the component that they were for particularly well. So what we've aimed for in 10.2.2 is to make icons accurately represent the component that they depict. If you are used to recognizing components by their icon in the IDE, on the form designer or in the tool palette, then you should still be able to recognize them easily. We've also made changes where they made sense in order to make an icon more accurately represent the component that it's for. A good example is a T-label component. In previous versions of the IDE, T-label had an icon that looked a bit like a luggage tag. It was a paper label. But of course, a T-label in Delphi and C++ Builder is not a luggage tag. It's not a paper label such as you might have on a desk or attached to a file. A T-label for us is a bit of text. And so the icon that we now have for T-label is a bit of text because it looks like exactly what you get when you drop a T-label on the form designer. Something similar is T-edit, which is a rectangle with some text and an edit cursor in it. For other icons, we've tried to make them have a common theme for related icons. So all dialogues, for example, have a dialogue frame with a separate icon inside. You can see topen dialog on screen and how it has a folder open icon inside a dialog. Or all FireDAC icons, for example, which you can see just above topen dialog here on screen. All FireDAC icons have that red database symbol. We've also tried to make the icons look clean and modern. They are designed as vectors, and they have very clear and simple and straightforward design with a bold and strong color palette. And we feel these look very modern and very clean. So we hope that they are clear and recognizable, that they accurately depict the components that they're for, and that they look modern. Now you might wonder what these icons look like on the dark theme. Here's the same set. The background color here is the background color that the IDE itself uses for the dark theme. And you can see the colors that we've chosen are still strong and still have good contrast against the dark theme. And here's what the component icons actually look like in the IDE. So you can see a couple of different screenshots here. The main one on the left, you can see a form designer and the tool palette. And you can see a fairly large size of the icon. You can see how they all share a very common style. They're all very clear, very colorful, and they're all very recognizable. To the right of that, you can see a zoomed in view of the structure pane where you can see the same icons. And on the rightmost screenshot is the standard category in the tool palette. We can see some of the other very common components, such as a group box or a checkbox. A couple of other interesting ones to note would be action lists, for example. So all T-action icons share a common theme, just as we have common themes for a whole bunch of other different types of related icons. It's very difficult to capture something like an action in an icon. And what we've gone for here is a movie clapboard, which is the thing that you clap, it makes a loud bang, and immediately afterwards the director yells action. And so all action, T-action, whatever components share that as a common theme. So let's have a look at some of these in a live demo. The first time that you open the IDE after installing, you'll be greeted with this new welcome dialog. This allows you to choose your favorite theme between light and dark. I'm just going to leave it at light for the time being. We'll toggle to dark in a moment. It also allows you to change some of the most common or the most important settings in the IDE, just to personalize it a little. We really want to encourage our users to make use of source control, and so you can configure and set that up right from this screen. And you can also change some of the most common settings, whether to autosave files and layout, to show the classic component toolbar, and also to set the default project folder. That's where projects are saved to or opened from by default. Once you're through with that, click Get Started and you're in the IDE. Now I installed the IDE here as an upgrade from 10.2.1, so you can see I already have items in my favorite projects and open recent on the welcome screen. But you'll notice there are a few other changes to the welcome screen in 10.2.2. Firstly, you can see that we've added some sample applications. So at the bottom of the center column, you can see a number of sample applications here. These are great applications that we think show what you can do with RAD Studio very easily. And they are actually pulled from Getlt, so when you click one of those, it will download from Getlt, install, and open the project. Now on the right-hand side, you'll notice probably the most visible change to the welcome screen, which are two new online feeds. So at the top we have an online feed of upcoming events, and these are webinars or other events that we run. We run a lot of webinars and events, and we want to make it easy for you to see what those are and what's coming up soon. So this is a list of the ones that are coming up soon. You can click any of them. You can see here this one, for example, is the one that you're watching right now. It's in 3 different time zones, and so it's shown 3 times. Lets you see which time zone is best for you. If you click that, it will just open the web browser and you can sign up and join. Similarly, we have a feed from YouTube. This is a feed of our most recently uploaded videos. We put a lot of content on YouTube. Hopefully when you open the IDE, you will see new content here periodically, and if any of it is interesting, just click it, open the web browser, and you can watch the video. Now notice that the IDE is using a new layout. It's called the Startup layout, and the Startup layout shows just the welcome page with all the docked windows off to the side as small tabs here. This is the layout that's shown by default when no files or projects are open, but the moment you open a file or a project, it will go back to the normal default layout. You can see I have a very simple FireMonkey application here, and you can see some of the new icons shown in the tool palette as well. Now if I want to change this to use the dark theme, there is a new button here up on the desktop layout toolbar. If I click that, it shows a menu and I can choose between the light and dark themes. So if I click the dark theme, the IDE will go and think for a moment, and when it comes back, the IDE will have a dark theme. And you can see here now that it's full screen showing in the video right now, it looks really good. Now notice that the form designer remains unthemed. Now we also have a new code editor theme. So if I switch over to the code here, you can see we have a new charcoal editor scheme as well. You can see that it uses quite subtle colors. You can see the string is this sort of pale blue and numbers are the sort of pale rose. This scheme should be very pleasant to look at for long periods of time, given that the dark theme is intended for productivity, for long use. So let's have a look at what's coming in future releases. So C++ Builder in 10.2.2 in the future. One thing that we've noticed with C Builder is that sometimes it can be a bit of a silo, and we want to change that. We want to show how easy it is to use C++ Builder with other C++ code and libraries from the wider C++ community. And we want to show how easy it is to pull in common third-party code, and how easy it is both to use those with C Builder or to move to C Builder. So there are a large number of very useful C++ libraries out there, and we've been examining those and ensuring that they work with C Builder, which they certainly and easily do, and then putting them on Getlt, which is our package manager, and that makes them easy to use. You can open Getlt, and with a single click you can install these libraries and have them available. So right now, for example, we have Eigen, which is a very famous linear algebra C++ library, TinyXML2, which is a XML library, and EasyBMP, which is a small but useful bitmap library. And those are up on Getlt right now. Of course, we're looking at many more libraries, so we have more coming, such as Google Test, which is a unit test framework, MurmurHash3, which is a hashing framework, and many more. And we really want to make it easy here to use some of the well-known C++ libraries that are out there. C++ Builder has great support for modern C++, and it's very compatible. And we really want to both demonstrate that and also make it really easy for you to make use of some of the stuff that's out there in the wider C++ community. Also in 10.2.2, we've focused a lot on compiler quality. So we fixed many small items to do with exceptions with the RTL, with library import and export, with debug info, with many others. And although each of these are individually small, the compound effect is huge. So the quality and the compatibility of the C++ compiler in 10.2.2 should be fantastic. It certainly makes using third-party C++ code or moving to C++ Builder easy. We also have many debugging fixes in 10.2.2. Now in the future, C++ 17, we've been talking about this for a while, and it is coming. So we will have an up-to-date compiler and language and more. Stay tuned. And with that, I'll hand over to Marco.
Thanks, David. While C++ news are really interesting, there is also something that we are actively working on in terms of the Delphi language. We have a number of coming features. The most relevant one is nullable types. This is the ability to have, for any native type, an unassigned value or a null value. Of course, nullable types are not identical to the original types. You might have to force a cast from one to the other, and of course the cast can fail if you are assigning a null value to a standard native type. Nullable types are implemented through managed records, and we plan adding some some feature to those as well. And the other area is some improvements in the syntax, like local variables constant initialization and some other ways to simplify coding. Now this is just a plan, there's nothing set in stone, and it's something that we'll work on for the next major release of the product. There are other key features in our roadmap. We are also actively focused on supporting 64-bit for macOS, and that would also help with iOS and iOS simulator. We are working on completing our transition to better integration of controls and native controls on the Android platform, something we already done foundation work in the Tokyo release. Publish more with RT APIs and including some of those APIs in components. Do additional work on RAD Server. As you've seen, we have started supporting JavaScript clients, but we have larger plans for that. And continuous fixing and improvements in the high DPI support area for VCL and also for FireMonkey. These are just some of the things we're working on, and we plan updating our current roadmap in the coming weeks. For more information, of course, you can always refer to Embarcadero.com, main site, our community, and the technical documentation about 10.2.2 release of RAD Studio is available in the doc wiki. And with that, thank you for attending this webinar or watching the replay, and we'd like to open it for questions.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for putting that together, Marco, Serena, and David. And thanks for all the work you've done on the new release. It's really great. Claudio here is just commenting. It says, Tokyo 10.2.2 is a great release version. Installed it yesterday, and now my Android apps work very fine. Many thanks for your great work and this great version. P.S. I love the dark theme.
Thank you. Yeah, we're happy to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you like how how Android's working with 10.2.2. We did a lot of work in terms of not only new features but also quality improvements in this release, specifically around Android. So that's great to hear. And the dark theme, I agree. The dark theme looks great, as David mentioned. We work with DelphiStyles.com on the actual style for the theme or the theme design, and they did a really nice job.
Yeah, I really like the dark theme quite a bit, and actually I like that you can go in and make your own theme as well using any of the VCL styles. So I had a little fun with that too, and made some used a couple different themes in there just to see what they look like. But it's nice to have that darker theme. It looks, I know that in the past I've turned the brightness down on my monitor like almost all the way down when I'm working late at night, but the dark theme is really pleasing looking, and it's great to see all the the new redesigned icons and stuff that look a lot better too. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the question panel, and we'll pass them on to product management, and they can answer them for you here. So question here, is the stack panel similar to the layout panel? And or how is it different?
Yeah, the idea of the layout panel is a container like HTML. You drop components and they take the space in the current row and then go to a new row and there's not enough space. So when you're resizing, the components will end up taking multiple rows. It can be handy, but in many cases you want something that is more stable. Like if you have a label and an edit, you can use it. You have to put those inside a panel and whatsoever. The stack panel is a stack. So in the vertical layout, one component is each line, and there's one. It's like a grid with a single column, and so each component goes in a line. You can put edit label, edit button, and they go use 3 lines. Now you might want to have the button aligned centrally, and the edits and labels using the entire space, or aligned to the left. And you can define the default alignment, and then each control can has its own alignment, centered, right, left, or just taking the entire space. And of course, you can use margins to leave enough room from one to the other. Or you can reverse it and go horizontal, and so that's a single row, and all components will be on the same row, most likely centered, but again, can be up and down, any way you want. And of course, you can combine them. You could put like a row inside a column or multiple rows in some multiple columns, so you can have some fun. They really help. I mean, specifically the vertical column, it's very handy because then it's flexible. It works better than other existing controls. Yeah, you can kind of achieve the same by having a bunch of controls all top aligned, but then the top alignment when it's tricky. And the other thing, you can change the position with like in hidden properties kind of thing. You can change the position. I don't know. I think it's a good idea. We haven't invented it. It comes from some of the layout controls of modern system. We've looked both into the WinRT panels and the Java layout panels and took some ideas and some hints.
Yeah, nesting panels is really a real powerful way to do things. There's a lot you can do with that. Another question here, how is card panel and tab control different besides just the visible tabs?
Nothing more than that. It's basically a bunch of cards without the pages, without the visual tabs. Yeah, I mean, could have been achieved the other way, but it is very specific. Now, there's one feature that's distinguishable, that there is baked in support for swiping. So using the gesture, the idea is you can swipe from one to the other. I mean, you can have it or not have it, but it's kind of baked into the concept of this control. It's not a huge addition, but it's handy and it's built in a very specific way. Again, the way you can move around tabs or change the sequence in the order, have disabled tabs pages that you don't go to is slightly different compared to the page control. Actually, in the very, very old days, the tab control has the very old days, the tab and the pages were separate. So the page control actually is very similar because the page control was without the tabs. But these are kind of old controls. You're not really maintaining much more. So kind of the card is the new way.
Also, I look at this card control as kind of a mobile-centric control for Windows in the sense that using a tab, like for example in FireMonkey, if using a tab control without the tabs, it's a common way of having this like navigation type interface, for example, for a sign-up form, for being able to swipe between different screens. And so this is also achieved with the card panel for VCL applications on Windows with the built-in gesture support, as Marco mentioned.
Yeah, and we should probably bring the card panel to FireMonkey.
Oh yeah, that's true. Let's see. It's because of their different layouts and stuff. Yeah. or I mean, yeah, different frameworks. Because it's interesting when I was like, you see a new FireMonkey control versus a new VCL control, you're like, ooh, I need that in my other type project. Let's see.
Jim, I saw a question about designing for multiple different target devices. So there was a question here about if I'm building an application and I want it to look the same across my Android 4-inch, 4.5-inch, and let's say 6-inch device, how do I best go about doing that? If you have an application and let's say you're only targeting one platform, you can just work on the master. Just make sure you're setting things like alignments, margins, etc. Now, if you want to have specific layouts for specific form factors, so for example, a 4-inch device is significantly smaller than a 6-inch device, I would recommend creating views for that. And then at runtime, the application will automatically load the correct view based on the target device. So if you create a view for a 4-inch and a 6-inch, and you're deploying that application to a 6-inch Android device, it would automatically load and display the 6-inch view. So that would give you a lot of flexibility when developing your application.
Yeah, I love the ability to do those views like that in really powerful way. It's one of those things I usually can get most of the way there just doing it on the master, but then being able to tweak it like that is really great. Let's see.
I see a comment here about quick edits. Love the quick edits and new features. Marco, there's a question about, I know that we made some enhancements to the quick edit support on VCL. Is there anything specific about that you'd like to point out?
No, there's been some tweaks and improvements that's more behind the scenes than customer facing. So yeah, I don't think that there's very significant differences, but there is some cleanup in the UI.
There's also a question here, Marco. It says, what was the JavaScript client support on Marco's sheet for the roadmap? Do you want to expand a little bit and talk about what we've done so far in terms of Sencha ExtJS and what we're talking about doing?
Yeah, what we've done so far is what I showed earlier, which is the ability to simplify the generation of JSON. I mean, this is useful for Sencha, but it's useful for, any library that uses JSON, which is like almost everything these days. This is a producer, so you can take a data set and write JSON out of it with a lot of mapping options. That's the first step. Now, the thing that it is still a bit cumbersome to use it. You need like 5 for controls to be tied together. So one simple thing that we're going to add is the ability to, specifically if you would just want to go with kind of defaults or very simple mapping to avoid having to use all of these components, but have like a helper or a way to simplify that kind of code if you just want to go for simple default scenarios. The other thing is that the overall, and that's a general thing, specifically to EMS and RAD Server, we want to simplify the ability to serve different types of content rather than JSON. So be able to serve JSON, to serve data, to serve files, to serve JavaScript files, either from the file system or with something that goes through a stream and a memory structure. So these are some of the things that are on the table.
There's a comment here about SVG images, and actually, interestingly, I just did a Google. It looks like there's a couple of components out there that do that. But on the FireMonkey side, there's a path, I think it's tpath, that you can actually, if you extract the path information from an SVG, it will render. It's exactly the same format, and so I've done that in the past and taken SVG paths, or extracted the path information from SVGs, put it in there, and been able to draw that. But so you could use that as well. So I don't know if there are plans to add SVG support natively to FireMonkey.
There aren't specific immediate plans, but it's something that we've discussed in the past.
And also a question here about rendering of transparent PNGs, which I know on FireMonkey they look phenomenal. I've seen a lot of really cool effects people have done with transparent PNGs, or they stretch them and lay them out over things and create really good effects. So I'm not sure if there's going to be something different on VCL that needs to be worked on, or any comments about that, Marco?
No, it's an area that we are discussing. Overall, I'm reconsidering the entire support for image lists and images and so on. So that's part of that overall plan.
No, yeah. Here's an interesting question. Glenn's asking, will it be possible in the future to create our own platform target packages, for example, allowing developers to integrate their own tool chain for specific platforms?
That's a possibility, but it's not exactly simple. So it's a fairly large surface to expose of the IDE. So it's something that we have it's not trivial for our internal developers to do, so it would be fairly complex for third parties at this point. I mean, it might change in the future, but we don't have immediate plans.
Seems like I remember, and I'm trying to think who it was, one of our tech partners has something that looks like that behaves that way, but apparently it's like it was quite a huge undertaking to accomplish, and I cannot remember the details on that.
I saw a question about how to download 10.2.2. So if you're an update subscription, you could go to the registered users downloads. 10.2.2 requires an active update subscription in order to be able to install it. So if you go to the registered users download, you can access the download from there. And I also shared the doc wiki link. So if you go to docwiki.embarcadero.com, you'll find a release 2 link, and that will direct you to the release 2 overview page on the doc wiki that highlights all the features we showed today and some additional information, and also direct links to the downloads.
So a few people saying that they've been using Delphi for a long time. It's great to see. There's a meme going around this week that's like reshare, retweet if your first IDE was a blue background or green on black or whatever it is. I think mine, so actually my first one was a Commodore VIC-20, which predated the 64. But I think I actually had an amber screen instead of a green screen as well that I used shortly after that. So I haven't seen that option yet. So a few questions about installation, installing the update if it's a reinstall. So one thing is you can use the migration manager, the settings migration assistant, I think it's called, to back up your settings. But it actually, if you tell it not to delete your registry, it just installs over the top fairly quick, especially if you're using the ESD, the online installer, not the ISO installer. Very quick, and it keeps all your settings and all your components intact. So you can totally do that, but if you want to back up your settings ahead of time, and that's a good idea, just keep a backup of those settings just in case something gets messed up. There's some questions here about the welcome page. You want to address those real quick?
Yeah, so I've seen a few questions about the dark theme and the welcome page. The response to the dark theme has been fantastic. We're very excited to have it out there, and it seems that everyone who's tried it out really likes it, which is really cool. The welcome page, there's a question about, so we have a new startup layout. When you start the IDE, it'll have a different layout of where the windows are. And that's only shown when you don't have any files or projects open. So the moment you open a project, or even just open a file, if you're not really doing debugging, but you're just using it as an editor, it will switch to the default layout. The startup layout is only shown basically when nothing is open, which is normally at startup. You can customize it, of course, just as you can with any layout if you happen to want some of the tool windows visible.
Well, one thing I noticed about the welcome page, and I haven't looked into it yet, is the lists, the sublists. When I have my screen expanded full screen, they don't fill up the full thing. Is there a way to make those taller or resize those, like the recent documents and recent projects and such?
Yeah, they may not be expanding correctly right now, we'll look into that.
Okay. I was just curious if I could like go in and edit the HTML or something myself.
Oh, I'm sure you can. Obviously, if you break something, we don't support it. But yeah, the welcome screen is just an HTML page. So yes, you could do whatever you want there.
So that's one thing, is that anything's possible, just whether or not it's a good idea. Here's a question here about Linux ARM architecture, like Raspberry Pi. Marco, you know that's something I'm always asking you about.
Yeah, it's something we're considering, but we don't have a release plan at this point in time.
Yeah, you can do quite a bit with most of the Linux, or most of the ARM single board computers will run Android. Raspberry Pi is actually the one that runs it the poorest, which is interesting. I don't know why they don't have better support for it, but a lot of the other ones actually come with, on their site, have an Android download, and I've ran FireMonkey apps on there, no problem on the Android, even on Raspberry Pi. And you can have your application start up or launch at startup, which then can make it run like in a kiosk mode and stuff like that. So it's really, that's a really good solution. But it would be nice to eventually have like a console application support, or straight up Linux. But the Android is a real good alternative on everything but the Raspberry Pi, interestingly. A lot of people looking forward to the macOS 64-bit, which I know is the next compiler release we have planned and coming. And one thing, actually, I'm really excited about the nullable types. I like those. Although I did implement a system with the records a while ago, with the managed records, came up with nullable types a while ago. And then there's a few tricks. Gosh, I did a presentation at some conference on it. It worked out pretty well. I guess I was going to say I should dig up the code, but I guess not much need, because it's coming. Any plans to support the Microsoft Surface tablets? Actually, I guess it technically already works on Surface tablets, because they are, we've had Windows VCL touch application support and FireMonkey touch screen application support for quite a while, and the Surface tablets are just Windows devices, and we have the themes, the Windows 10 themes and stuff like that. So you can do, not sure exactly what you're wanting to do, but you can do quite a bit already with what we have existing. So pretty straightforward, I think. I don't know if there's anything we want to add to that, or anything else planned to expand that support.
I mean, in general, we have working support. There is one specific area, which is the new in the creators update has a specific API for managing the pen, which is different from the regular touch APIs, and that's an API we don't support, and we are looking forward to support in the future. Now, being a Windows message, technically it can be, handled directly in a VCL application, but of course that's a significant effort that should be part of the library and not part of like specific developers code and specific applications.
Okay, there's a comment here about the registry user download doesn't seem to be working. I'm trying it right now. I know sometimes it's slow because there's a lot of people using it, but I'm testing it here to see if it is down or if it's just slow.
Yeah, the other thing I want to mention, I've seen a question about Mac OS 64-bit support. We know that for new application on the store, that will become mandatory next January. For running applications on the OS itself, the current version, High Sierra, is going to support 32-bit up, and it will be next release due sometime in 2018, probably towards the end of the year, that might completely break out of 32-bit. So we're doing our best to have a timely solution, and we'll provide an update.
It plans to support different settings for source code printing. I haven't printed source code since I was in school.
Wow, yeah. No current plan. But the support is fairly good, so.
I'm trying to think, there was an add-in I used to use to format or do pretty printing, but I used it for like pasting it in web pages and stuff like that. And it had a lot of functionality in there. So that might be, gosh, what was that? I think it was GExperts, which I guess has now been consumed by, what is it, CNPAC. So I'm not sure if they have something in there for source code printing or yeah, I'm not getting to the registered user download page, so I will ping the help desk and see what's going on with that. It hasn't errored on me yet, but it's just still loading, so it might be more than just a high load. If anybody has any other questions, put them in. I don't know, Marco, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or any of the questions I missed that you wanted to bring up?
No, going through the questions as well, I don't see anything critical. Feel free to follow up over email to each of us, together or separately, as you prefer. The other thing I want to mention that we plan, I think I mentioned it, but we do plan updating the roadmap after this release. It will take a few more days, if not weeks, but we'll try to do that as soon as possible. Of course, we want to capture a little more of the plans for the next year, and we need to have some discussion with architects after they take a second break for at least a couple of days after this crazy release, and then we'll should be able to have better plans for the near future.
So there, Matthew's elaborated on his printing code, saying he says he uses it for reference purposes. Says it currently uses the IDE editor settings, but he uses a larger font on the screen, and you wants a normal sized font for printing purposes. So interesting. I don't know if, I guess doesn't sound like there's any plans on that. So maybe I usually have like a Notepad++ or something open at the same time, so you might just paste it in there and print it. I guess not ideal solution, but something to consider for the future, I guess. Put a feature request in for that, Matthew. The quality.embarcadero.com, that is the channel to go to for feature requests and bug reports. I get people occasionally saying, how do I report bugs, or how do I make feature requests? And that's the channel to go through, and it is reviewed by product management frequently. And how many, I didn't see, there was a question actually about this, how many bugs were fixed in as far as Quality Central issues?
Several hundred bugs were fixed in this release, and that includes internally reported bugs, but in terms of publicly reported issues on quality.embarcadero.com, over 150 issues were fixed. And you can find a list of those issues on the EDN page. If you go to docwiki.embarcadero.com and you look at the Release 2 landing page, there's a direct link to that page, and there's a table with the issues that were fixed. And one thing that we do every time when we do a product release, we update the quality portal and the numbers to indicate that they've been fixed. So we usually don't update them publicly while we're working on them. I mean, we'll update them and comment, etc., but we don't necessarily update the status until the release is out. So you'll see a lot of issues have been fixed and addressed, and they should be marked as closed in the quality portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that between yesterday and today. So the issue resolved as 231, but those include duplicates. So it's 150 distinct fixes or items we cannot reproduce anymore because of fixes, plus another 80 that were either duplicates or things that, sorry, this is how they work, we're not going to do anything, and other types of resolutions.
So Glenn's saying that in the past, the t-edits and memos from both VCL and FireMonkey didn't invoke the Windows 10 touch keyboard. So if someone tapped in there, it didn't invoke it. That's odd, Glenn, because I'm pretty sure I've done that before. I have a Windows 10 tablet. It's not a Surface, but it's just a Dell tablet and a Samsung tablet, and I'm quite sure I've seen that pop up. So, and Marco, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I also don't own a tablet, so I don't have first-hand experience. I mean, the edits are edits, so we're using platform edits on the VCL, and you can optionally go for platform edits also in FireMonkey.
Yeah.
So whatever happens at the operating system level, we just follow. But it might be that you need some extra settings for configuration. So I really don't have direct experience on this.
Yeah. There's a question here about Linux daemon wizards planned. I know you can make Linux daemons now. Those are just a manual process as far as setting the project up correctly. But any plans to add that as a target platform or target option in like a wizard type thing?
There has been some discussion in the past about unifying the concept of service application through on the platforms where this can be done, which are Linux, Windows, and Android actually. But for now, that didn't happen. It's not like a top priority, honestly. But we can certainly reconsider if there is demand.
Yeah, I guess you can kind of sort of do a service on Mac OS. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I guess it technically would be a daemon on there.
Yeah. Probably Linux and Mac OS are similar. Android, the technology is fairly different. Mm-hmm. But there are a few things in terms of core platform that we've been considering would be nice. Like for example, there's been we have done the full design for a class to run another application. Because it's not that difficult in each platform, but it's fairly different in each platform. And we unified the way you receive parameters with the good old param count, param string, but we don't have a way to do either a shell execute or an exec on Linux or whatever with a simple, straightforward mechanism. And of course, having both sides. I mean, receiving parameters, passing parameters, invoking services being invoked. It would be nice, but again, it's another thing that's not at the top of the priority list.
Yep. And David, I got one last question here for you about C++ Linux support.
We're looking into that, but I don't have anything I can announce publicly, I'm afraid.
Okay.
But if you want it or need it, please drop me a line. It's always good to know.
So, Ravi's...
One other question there. Just while I'm speaking, I saw a question about improving IntelliSense in the IDE. See, I know this is an area that people would like to see work on, and we're looking into it. I myself would definitely like changes there. Don't have anything public we can announce yet, but yeah, I can tell you we're looking into it.
Yeah, I was thinking actually it'd be interesting to create an IDE expert using like some of the the AI libraries that are out there. Delphi has they're neural network libraries and like that use that for the IntelliSense and like code refactoring and stuff like that. But that's probably going to usher in the singularity in the upcoming AI apocalypse. So maybe that's not a good idea.
It's a very interesting idea, but I can tell you that the areas that we're looking into that we can't publicly discuss do not involve AI.
Oh, well, that's probably a good thing. So, Ravi, it sounds like you're having some issues migrating a project. I'm not sure there's enough information here. I would suggest contacting support@embarcadero.com, and opening a ticket with them, and they can probably help you. Also, I know the SCs do quite a bit of help with people moving forward projects, usually around like Unicode and stuff like that, so they might be able to help you. But I'm not sure them getting enough information here from the comment section to be able to help you out. Sorry about that. But lots of options available to you. Probably support would be a great one. They can really walk through stuff like that with you. Okay, well, we're already past top of the hour, and there were a lot of great questions. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And thank you to the product management team for all the work that you've put into this and all the work you're putting into future releases. I know it's even though it gets frantic and busy here at the end, I know you're always busy with what's coming next and few versions down the road. So thanks for all that you do. And just real quick, do you guys anything you wanted to add real quick before we go? We'll start with Serena.
Nothing specific. We're really excited about this release, and we look forward to getting your feedback on it. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out over email.
Okay. Marco.
Nothing else from what I said. Thanks a lot for attending, and keep in touch. And have a good, nice holidays, and a great new year.
And David.
Nothing much to add there. Hope you really like the release. We're happy with it. Got some great stuff there. And yeah, just to echo what Marco and Serena said, we're always happy to hear from you. So get in touch.
Fantastic. It's actually interesting. I didn't even think about it until it was released, and gosh, one of the MVPs pointed out, but we now can choose between the light side and the dark side, and the dark side looks really appealing. And the Star Wars movie premieres tonight, and it looks like there might be a possibility of people going to the dark side there. So here you can go to the dark side with the IDE and the dark side at the Star Wars movie tonight. I'm going to the premiere. I'm pretty excited. So anyway, curious to see where
If you want to get really geeky there, Jim, the little icon to change between the dark theme and the light theme is a moon. So we go with Star Wars and go, that's no moon.
That's no moon. That's right. That's exactly what I was thinking. That's no moon. That's a theme-changing icon. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, and thanks everybody for attending. And looking forward to hearing all the great projects you guys are working on with Delphi. So thanks a lot. Take care, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Marco, Serena, and David, for that presentation and for all the hard work you guys are doing on RAD Studio here. If anybody has any questions, go to put in the question panel here, and we will get them answered for you. Al's got a question about the date picker, like Julian, if it'll support Julian dates or both Julian and Gregorian.
The date picker supports the Gregorian calendar. It was designed with the Gregorian calendar in mind.
I'm trying to remember Julian calendar. I know I used to know what it was.
It's old. I believe it's older, but then was around for a bit longer than the Gregorian, or in use for a bit longer.
Yeah, I actually remember. I think I way back in the day I had to get a library card, and they used Julian calendars for your birthday or something like that. And so I had to figure out how to do it. Let's see. So there's a question here about VCL high DPI support. Marco, if you want to take that one.
We've done a few fixes, not as much as we wanted, and we have more planned for the coming release.
Just trying to get David connected here. Let's see. With changeable themes, will it be possible to change font size in different parts of the IDE aside from the coding panel?
So globally, as in when you say in different parts of the IDE, not individually, but we actually already have a registry setting that controls the font that's used in the IDE. So we don't expose that, but you can actually already change that. And what I might do is go and dig up those details, and I'll post a link in the chat.
Yeah, in the past, I actually wrote a bunch of tools for fine-tuning the font. Like, for example, the object inspector when you're doing live demos is so small. And changing the font is not the big deal. The problem is that a few of the controls don't size properly on the font, so there were hiccups here and there. That probably most of them being fixed at this point.
Right, so I've just dug that up. We actually have this documented on our doc wiki, the registry and the registry settings. So I will. In fact, I can just see the question in the question log. I'm just going to paste in the link as a reply to that question.
Oh, fantastic.
Actually, while we're talking dark theme, I can see a question here about, hi, some tool windows do not completely apply the dark theme, like audits, metrics, Q&A. I'm not sure what the Q&A one is. But yeah, that's right. So the IDE is themed via VCL themes, VCL styles, rather. But not everything in the IDE is implemented using the VCL. Some of it is .NET. and those .NET UI elements won't reflect the theme.
And then, Jim, I saw a question regarding the new data set mapping to JSON for JavaScript client support feature. The link that I shared is just what we have covered on the what's new. We do plan on building out that documentation, and I think, Marco, you have a blog post planned on this and also a sample application. Is that right?
Yeah, the sample application I showed today, I'll blog about tomorrow. I share all the source code. Not there is much source code, but I share the source code. There is an entry in the homepage for in the release 2 notes in terms of documentation. There aren't many details on the class itself. So the batch move architecture in itself is documented. Like most of the configuration is done at the batch move level, and that is documented, like the field mapping and so on. But the specific documentation for the JSON writer is not there because it was added a bit at the last minute, and so doc will be coming.
Okay. There's that link David shared. I'm going to check that out on changing those font sizes. Especially when I'm doing presentations, it's really useful for recording videos. Was there any work on the Bluetooth LE components for this release, as far as like some bug fixes on that?
I don't think there was any specific work done on Bluetooth for this particular release. But we have some things that we're looking into in terms of Bluetooth enhancements. But as far as I recall, we did publish a public table of all the publicly reported issues that we fixed. I don't believe there was any specific work done for Bluetooth.
Okay. So Julian calendars go before 0 BCE. Okay, yeah, so different year structure. Let's see. Is the welcome page configurable? I think we talked about it a little bit this morning, David.
We did. This question, I was just looking in the question log, is about whether some of the panels in the welcome page can be sort of displayed or not here to get rid of the sample projects, for example. No, that's not configurable at the moment. It's not a bad idea though.
I think the HTML is available someplace. You probably go in and tweak it, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, so the welcome page really is just an HTML page with a couple of style sheets, and you can go in and edit that if you want. To support that, and you could break things, but you know, if you feel adventurous, then by all means.
I've always been of the I don't know, that's always been mine. It's like, oh, let's just go see if I can break this. That's kind of my personality, I guess. Oh, here, David, when do you plan to add dark theme support to your Parnassus bookmark navigator?
Oh, right. Well, this is outside Embarcadero. I have been so busy getting 10.2.2 out that I have not actually added support to bookmarks or navigator yet, but I've been planning to some weekend simply because doing so would make a really nice blog post about how to make use of the Tools API support for plugins. So I don't actually have a particular date. It's when I have time. And I tend to find when I work here, I don't really have much time. But I definitely want to do that soon.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I totally understand that. So Bruce says he's going to test the Bluetooth issue he found, and if not, he'll report it. Yeah, just report that on quality.embarcadero.com, and we'll make sure that gets looked at. See, trying to go through here. I think that's it. There's a couple questions here I'm not sure that I understand completely. Apparently the register user downloads is not responding. I've messaged help desk. Hopefully they'll get that. Oh, is there a way to hide trial components in Getlt? Okay, that makes sense. So in Getlt to show everything but the trial components.
No, I mean we have positive categories, not negative categories. If you go on sections other than the trial sections, you should see the component that pertain. Although there might be things that are double listed as components and trials at the same time. They are all marked out. All trial components have trial at the beginning of the name, so we try to make it clear if it is a trial or real component that you can use and you have a license for, because it's either open source or it's a freebie from the vendor. And we introduced the trial category with the update 1 time frame. So that should help getting things a little more clear. We can consider being more strict in terms of removing from the other categories the trial elements.
Okay, yeah. All right, that might be useful. Stephen's saying the Getlt should have a checkbox list instead of a radio button list, so you can just select just what you have. So start with all selected, I guess, maybe would be the.
Well, yeah, the problem is not the UI. The problem is if the web service supports passing multiple entries, which I'm not sure. So, I mean, yeah, behind it there are remote calls to a server, and yeah, if the current protocol supports one parameter, it's not much of a UI change, but more of a protocol change, which of course we can do. I mean, but it will take a little extra time. But again, we can also make sure, I mean, use the categories a little better. Until Tokyo Update 1, the categories were more limited. Now we added a bunch more, and so we can make sure that we separate things better, so you can get what you're looking for. Like the samples category makes sense. The styles, these are very specific areas. Components is a bit of everything, and library we don't even know why it's there because it's components. It's the same thing, so whatever.
So also the question coming here about the forums.embarcadero.com search function. We're looking into that. So one of the things about the old forums is that system's actually deprecated, I guess, kind of, sort of. People are still using it, so we left it there. Some of the infrastructure behind it, though, is not as maintainable as we'd like for it to be. So we're looking actively looking at alternatives for it again. So like I said, the help desk is looking into that, but I'm not sure if they're going to get it fixed anytime soon. The system it's on is really outdated and not supported anymore, and there's customizations. So it's unfortunately, yeah, might not be fixable at this point. Okay, let's go around real quick, and if there's anything I missed that you want to talk about, then you can bring that up now, or otherwise we'll just go ahead and sign off. So we'll start with David.
I just saw a question come in. It was asking about, well, there's two things actually. It's asking about the Atom x86 processor for Android and C++ for iOS simulator. So I'll let Marco or Serena answer the first one, but the second, C++ for the iOS simulator. As you know, we have plans for upgrading Clang, and it would come along, or at least be much easier to implement once we've done that. So we don't have specific plans at the moment, but it would be a very useful feature, and so it's definitely something that once we have our much anticipated, I'm really looking forward to this, to having the new Clang out there. Once we have that, definitely be looking into supporting the iOS simulator. But the first half of that question was, is there any plan to support the Atom x86 processor on the Android platform? Marco or Serena?
I can address part of that. I've tested that. I think Marco has as well. So they've introduced, it's called libhoudini, which is a layer on Android that does a quite good job of translating ARM code to x86 code, and your ARM applications work on Atom. There's a couple minor nuances, so I'm not sure if those are going to be addressed or not, but it's interesting. So Intel announced that they weren't doing Atom on Android devices anymore, but then they started focusing on like Chromebooks, and now Google said, "Oh, we're going to bring Atom or Android Play Store to the Chromebook." So now Android Play Store is now running on Chromebooks, which have Atom processors in them, which are running Chrome OS, but also Android as well. So, and I've tested on there, and they work on there. But again, there's like a couple minor things, like the height of the status bar is not represented correctly, and I think there's a couple other minor things. And do you want to add anything on that, Marco?
No, yeah, we have like a 2 or 3 specific bugs logged. There is a toolbar issue, which is, I don't know how that has to do with the fact it's running on a different CPU, the fact it trims 10 pixels in your toolbar, whatever. So there are 2 or 3 items that are open that we've been investigating. The handy thing is actually that it opens up using some of the Intel-based, Windows-based also emulators for Android, like BlueStacks is one I've used quite a bit. And you can run and debug your Android apps on BlueStacks on Windows. That's actually quite nice. I mean, the Delphi built or C++ built application with FarmMonkey and everything on the Windows platform using that. And again, it uses libudini as well. We were looking into like actually pushing ahead, but then yeah, as Jim mentioned, I mean, Intel announced they're kind of withdrawing from the platform after they've been pouring a lot of money into like convincing Asus and convincing others that they had to go with the Intel processors for Android. So we'll see. We're monitoring it. Again, there isn't much that we have to do to support it via libudini. Of course, if that platform would take off significantly in terms of numbers, we would also consider having a native compiler and a native option, because that would offer better performance. But right now, we don't have a specific plan.
Okay, great. Serena, anything you want to add really quick?
Nothing in particular. We do have a lot of blogs already up that cover 10.2.2 on community.embarcadero.com. And of course, if you have additional questions, feel free to comment on our blog posts, and there'll be more and more content coming up in the coming weeks.
Okay, great. There's a couple questions here about some third-party components. There is a DCU compatibility issue that I think we have a hot fix that's being worked on for that. So it'll fix. There was just some binary compatibility issues, and it looks like maybe like 1 or 2 component vendors have an issue with it, but we're just trying to make sure it gets ironed out. So that should be straightened up hopefully quite soon.
Yeah, so generally speaking, Point releases are DCU compatible, and so as Jim said, we found an issue and that's impacting some customers, and we're planning on addressing this very quickly.
Yeah, so that's what that's about. But we've just notified all of them. We're working with all the tech partners to make sure that goes smoothly. But it should, like I said, we're probably only affecting a very small portion of them. But we hope to have it fixed soon. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for being part here in putting this together for us. And thanks, everybody, for showing up and asking questions, and all your enthusiasm and support for Delphi, RAD Studio, and C++ Builder. Take care, everybody, and have a happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. I wanted to just briefly go through a couple of things. The downloads are available as a registered user download if you have an active update subscription. If you would like to download the trial, you can also go to our website to do so. We have a lot of great information on the new features at docwiki.embarcadero.com, which is our online documentation. And we also added a number of samples to this release, and I showed you the 3 different demos we added for the 4 new VCL controls, which you can also access in the product if you install the samples. I saw a question here about the new card panel and whether or not the cards animate on change. i.e. when you swipe left or right. We do provide built-in gesture support for those, but there is no built-in transition effect, so like a blur effect or pixelate effect or something like that. I'm assuming that that was your question. If not, please feel free to enter questions, and if you haven't entered a question yet during the webinar, you can do so right now in the questions pane. There's also a comment that the old icons will not be missed. Thank you. We also think that the new component icons look very nice, and they really complement the new dark theme and the existing light theme well. And we are in the process of sending out emails to customers that are on Enterprise and Architect with update subscription with their RAD server serial number. So you'll be receiving an email that actually contains that serial number. So it's not something you're going to see in your downloads. It's something you're going to get an email about. So I would recommend checking your spam filter. I was told by the team today that all the emails have been sent out. If you, for some reason, don't receive the email, feel free to send me a note, and I'll put my email address here in the chat. Craig, anything you wanted to add?
Unfortunately, I'm unable to listen to the audio of the presentation while I'm hosting from my own machine, so I kind of missed it. And so I'm a little shy on questions there, but I have tried the new theme already, and it's really slick looking, really like it. It's particularly, for me, I find it particularly soothing to use in the evening, because going to sleep after coding late in the evening is sometimes challenging, but I don't have that issue with the dark theme. So thanks for my coffee hours back.
You're welcome. Let's see. All right, I don't see any other questions. Again, if you have any questions about the new features or anything you want to share with us, feel free to reach out to us over email. And we look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to you enjoying RAD Studio 10.2.2. And with that, I think we're going to end the webinar for tonight, and we wish you all a happy holidays.
Excellent. Thank you, Serena. Questions on, we did just get a question on the timeline, so maybe you can address that before I close this down.
Yeah, I see a question here for macOS 64-bit. macOS 64-bit is a target platform that is in our roadmap that we've published, and something that is an important target. Of course, there's the announcement from Apple. The Apple announcement is for new applications going into the store and not existing applications. That said, macOS 64-bit is a very important platform for us, and something that we will be adding in the future to the product, and we're looking at adding in the next major version release.
Fantastic, and thank you again for all the presentations, Serena. So if anybody does have questions that didn't get answered here, Serena's email address is dropped in the chat, I believe. Go ahead and I'll drop it in there myself right now, and go ahead and get questions over to Serena directly.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening or morning, depending on where you're located.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye.